I stepped onto the plane, already exhausted. 14 hours ahead of me, a meeting first thing after landing, and the dull ache in my shoulders that had been building since dawn. I had paid extra for this seat, not for luxury, but for sanity. I needed space to work, to rest, to not arrive looking like I crawled out of a washing machine. Business class was my one concession to the chaos of travel. It was a quiet agreement with myself. Get through this flight, and you'll be sharp tomorrow. As soon as I reached my row, I saw it. My seat, my exact seat number, printed clearly on my boarding pass, was occupied. Not by a person, by a bag. A designer handbag, in an ostentatious shade of beige, the kind of color that tries too hard to look understated. The leather caught the overhead lights like it expected applause. It sat propped upright, buckled neatly into the seat like it had its own boarding pass. The woman sitting in the adjacent window seat leaned against it protectively, one arm draped across the top like she was shielding a child. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though we were nowhere near sunlight. A fitted red blouse, perfectly styled blonde hair, lips painted in a gloss that caught the cabin lighting just so. She looked like someone who spent a long time perfecting the image of someone who didn't need to try. She was mid-conversation on her phone, voice projected outward, as though she believed quiet talking was for people of lesser importance. I told him to just handle it, she said into the phone, annoyance curling every word. Honestly, if they can't follow simple instructions, then that's not my problem. I paused beside her. I assumed perhaps she hadn't realized that maybe she placed the bag there momentarily. I took one breath, steadying myself from irritation, and spoke. "Excuse me," I said. "I believe this is my seat." She didn't look at me, not even a twitch to acknowledge I existed. She simply raised her free hand slightly, palm out, in a gesture that told me to wait, like I was interrupting something sacred. "Yes, I'm on the plane now," she continued into the phone. "No, I'm not dealing with it. I already told them. It stays there." Her hand tapped the top of the bag affectionately. I stood there, my carry-on still in hand, feeling the eyes of nearby passengers shift toward us. People love a spectacle, especially one that promises drama but requires no personal involvement. When she finally ended her call, she slid her sunglasses down her nose just enough to make eye contact. Her eyes were a sharp blue, cold, assessing, almost amused. "You're in my seat," I repeated, calm but firm. She smiled, small and dismissive. "No," she said, touching the bag lightly. "This seat is for my Birkin." She said it like it should explain everything. Like the brand name alone justified rearranging the cabin. I blinked. "Your bag is sitting in my seat." "It needs space," she replied, as though explaining something to a child. "The compartments are filthy, and I'm not risking damage. You can just take that one." She pointed vaguely over her shoulder, toward economy. There was no apology, no confusion, no misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. She genuinely believed this made sense. I forced a neutral breath. "I paid for this seat. That is my seat number. I need to sit here." She let out a soft laugh, a condescending flutter of sound. "Look, some people are flexible," she said. "You seem adaptable." Adaptable. As though I should be proud to be chosen for inconvenience. A flight attendant approached, sensing tension. A young woman with neat posture and a practiced soft smile. "Is everything all right here?" "Yes," the woman in the red blouse said immediately, smile widening. "There's just been a little mix-up. They must have accidentally double-booked this seat, but I checked in early, so I'll be keeping it. But he's fine to take one in economy. He's being very understanding." The flight attendant turned to me. I already had my boarding pass out. I placed it in her hand without a word. She read it, then looked at the seat number, then at the bag. "I see," she said carefully. "Ma'am, this seat does belong to him. Would you mind stowing your bag in the overhead compartment or under the seat in front of you?" The woman, Emily, as I later learned, gave a tight, patronizing smile. "This is a limited edition Birkin. It's worth more than the seat itself. The leather cannot be compressed or scratched. I'm sure you understand." She redirected the same smile back to me, the kind used to dismiss and insult in the same breath. The flight attendant tried again. "Ma'am, all carry-on items must be properly stored for takeoff." "No," Emily cut in, voice rising just enough to draw more stares. "This is staying right here. It needs air. I will not shove it under someone's feet." The attendant hesitated. This was the moment. The tension balanced on her next decision. Enforce the rules and risk a scene, or try to de-escalate and keep the cabin calm. "Sir," she said to me quietly, "there is an open seat temporarily available just a row behind. Would you mind sitting there while we straighten this out?" The eyes of passengers pressed like invisible weight across my back. Some skeptical, some sympathetic, some entertained. Everyone waiting for my reaction. I swallowed irritation, embarrassment, anger. I didn't want to escalate, not yet. I nodded once. The attendant exhaled quietly in relief. I moved to the temporary seat. It was fine. It was still business class. But it wasn't the point. As I sat down, I could see Emily recline luxuriously in her window seat, one arm draped proudly over her precious bag. She looked self-satisfied, triumphant, as if she had proven something important. She leaned slightly toward the man across the aisle and said loudly enough for several rows to hear, "Some people just aren't used to flying business. They get emotional over the smallest inconveniences." A few passengers looked away. Others shook their heads. No one said anything. For a moment, I sat perfectly still. My jaw tight, my fingers curled loosely around the armrest. My pulse was steady, but my mind sharpened. I wasn't done. Not because of the seat itself. Not because of discomfort or pride. But because of the way she looked at me. The way she spoke. As though I was beneath her. As though she deserved more and I deserved less. This wasn't just inconvenience. It was disrespect. And humiliation. And a very public one. I stared ahead, feeling the hum of the engines through the floor as passengers continued boarding. The cabin noise rose gradually, soft conversation, overhead bins closing, the click of seatbelts. I breathed slowly. I wasn't angry. I was focused. There are moments where arguing is pointless, where words bounce off entitlement like stones on steel. Sometimes you don't fight. You wait. You wait for the exact moment where the other person reveals who they are so clearly that no one can ignore it. I looked toward her again. She was laughing at something on her phone now, comfortable, confident that she had won. I felt the smallest shift in my expression, a quiet, deliberate, internal decision. This wasn't over. Not even close. I sat in the temporary seat, hands resting loosely in my lap, breathing steady. The plane was still boarding, people still settling in, yet my mind had already shifted into a different gear. I wasn't thinking about the discomfort, the inconvenience, or the spectacle anymore. I was thinking about something else, about strategy. I knew better than to match arrogance with anger. Entitlement thrives on reaction. What it cannot survive is documentation. A friend of mine, a lawyer, once told me, never argue with someone who's already convinced they're above consequence. Just collect the evidence and let their own behavior do the work. I adjusted my posture slightly and glanced toward Emily. She was speaking again, loudly, as if she wanted everyone to hear. She had taken off her sunglasses now, revealing eyes sharpened by irritation and superiority. She was gesturing with manicured hands as she told the man beside her about her bag. "This model is impossible to get unless you have connections," she said. "They actually limit who can buy them. Most people can't understand that level of exclusivity." Her audience nodded politely, though his expression was more strained than impressed. He was close enough to be polite, but far enough to not want to be involved. I lowered my gaze casually, reached into my pocket, and unlocked my phone. I wasn't recording video. I didn't need to. I switched to audio recording, clear, simple, quiet. I set the phone face down on my thigh, microphone unobstructed. I didn't need to catch the entire situation. I only needed her words, her tone, her refusal to comply, her belief that her possessions outranked airline rules. Just as the recording started, Emily sighed dramatically, as if exhausted by the burden of everyone else's existence. I shouldn't even have to explain this. Some people clearly don't fly enough to understand how these things work. Business class should be reserved for people who appreciate it. The words hung heavily in the air. A couple in the row ahead exchanged a glance. A woman behind her muttered something under her breath. The shift in atmosphere was subtle but real. Entitlement has a way of souring shared space. A male flight attendant walked by, doing his final cabin check. He paused briefly at my row, recognizing me from earlier. "We're handling the seating situation," he said quietly. "Thank you for your patience." I nodded. "No problem. I understand." He offered a small, appreciative smile before continuing down the aisle. I could feel the contrast between our tones. He spoke to me with respect. He spoke to her with caution. I turned slightly, focusing on Emily again. She wasn't just refusing to move. She was mocking the situation as if it validated her status. She touched the bag like it was a trophy, a physical certification of her social hierarchy. Then, in the same tone she might use to comment on weather, she said, "I don't care what anyone says. I'm not putting it in some overhead bin. Those things are basically dust traps. This is a $35,000 bag. People need to understand value." The number alone drew attention. A few passengers lifted their heads. Someone scoffed quietly. Luxury didn't bother people. Flaunting it did. The recording captured all of it. A few minutes later, the lead flight attendant returned. She was older than the first, with a calm, authoritative presence. The kind of experience that comes from handling countless crises with poise. "Ma'am," she said, addressing Emily with professional restraint, "we need to resolve the seating issue before we can close the cabin doors. Your bag must be stored in the overhead compartment or under the seat in front of you. Those are federal airline regulations." Emily didn't smile this time. She didn't pretend politeness. "I said no," she snapped. "This seat is staying as is. I checked in early. If he's upset, that is not my concern." The lead attendant remained unfazed. Your check-in time does not override assigned seating, nor does the value of your belongings. This should have been the moment Emily adjusted. Back down. Chose reason. But entitlement rarely recognizes limits until it collides with them. She crossed her arms. "Do you know who I am?" The phrase landed like a challenge. And immediately, several passengers reacted with subtle groans, eye rolls, and looks of disbelief. The cabin understood exactly what type of conflict this had become. The flight attendant did not flinch. "I'm concerned with passenger compliance and safety, not personal status. I'm asking again. Please remove your bag." "And I'm saying again," Emily fired back, leaning forward, her voice rising sharply. "I am not moving it. If he wants to sit here so badly, he can wait until we land and file a complaint or something. But I'm not risking damage to this bag. It cost more than his entire travel budget." The insult was direct and loud. Some passengers turned fully in their seats. A few murmured disapproval. Someone whispered, "Unbelievable." I remained silent, watching. The lead attendant's tone shifted, subtle, but definitive. "Very well. I will need to speak to the captain about a non-compliant passenger." For the first time, Emily faltered. Her eyebrows tightened. Her posture straightened. "Excuse me." "Please remain seated," the attendant said before walking away. The aisle seemed quieter after she left. The air heavier. The situation no longer looked amusing. It looked precarious. Emily glanced around, assessing reactions. She seemed to realize that the crowd was no longer neutral. They were witnesses. I slowly lifted my phone, stopped the recording, and saved the file. Then, as calmly as if I was checking the time, I stood and approached the front cabin. The lead attendant was speaking to another crew member. I waited until she acknowledged me. "I just wanted to provide this," I said quietly, "in case it helps clarify what happened." I handed her my phone, not the device itself, but the audio file already open and playing. Emily's voice came through clearly. Her refusal, her insults, her entitlement, her explicit denial of instructions. The attendant listened for less than a minute before her expression settled into something resolute. She nodded once. "Thank you," she said. This will be handled. I returned to my temporary seat. Emily was now tapping her fingernails nervously against the armrest. She tried to maintain her earlier air of dominance, but her foot had begun tapping. Her mask was slipping. Minutes passed. Not many. Enough to allow tension to thicken. Then the lead attendant returned, flanked by the male attendant. Her voice was calm, but final. "Ma'am, you have been given multiple clear instructions, and you have refused to comply. Due to safety and seating regulations, you must remove your bag and store it properly, or you will be relocated to a different seat." Emily's voice cracked. "Relocated." "To economy," the attendant clarified, with no room for argument. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the subtle cabin noises seemed to pause. Emily's face flushed red, but she still tried to argue. "You can't do that. I paid." "You paid for a seat," the attendant replied. "Not for two." Her composure broke. "This is ridiculous. I will be filing complaints, lawsuits, everything. I have status." "Your choice," the attendant said simply. "Move the bag or we proceed." I watched Emily's jaw clench. Her pride, her identity, her carefully crafted superiority, all cornered. She didn't answer. She looked frozen, indignant, terrified of humiliation and unable to avoid it now. The moment was perfect, tense, silent, balanced on the edge of consequence. And that was exactly where the section ends. I could see the exact moment her confidence cracked. It was subtle at first, a tightening of her jaw, a flicker of panic in her eyes, a tremor in her fingers as she touched the handle of the bag like it could shield her from consequences. For the first time since I'd seen her, she looked unsure. Not defeated, uncertain. The shift was small, but unmistakable. The lead attendant remained perfectly steady, waiting. No pressure. No raised voice. Just the quiet weight of a rule finally being enforced. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The situation was her creation, and now she was trapped inside it. She inhaled sharply through her nose, the sound thin and strained. "Fine," she murmured. But her tone carried something harsh and brittle underneath, as if the word had scraped her throat on the way out. She lifted the bag with exaggerated care, holding it like a fragile artifact, and placed it on her lap. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning reactions. Some passengers looked away, unwilling to witness humiliation directly. Others openly watched, the memory already being written into a story they'd retell later. The kind of story that travels from one city to another, passed from one stranger to the next. The lead attendant nodded. "Thank you. We'll escort you to your new seat." The phrase landed like a verdict. Emily blinked. "Wait, my new seat?" "Yes. You were given multiple opportunities to comply earlier. In refusing to do so, you forfeited your seating priority. You'll still be on this flight, but we can no longer allow you to remain in business class." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her face went pale, then flushed, then pale again. She clutched the bag tighter, as though holding it closer could restore her sense of superiority. Around us, the mood shifted. Tension transformed into the anticipation of justice. The cabin was a theater now, and everyone knew it. The attendant stepped aside slightly, giving her space to stand. Emily finally rose. Not gracefully, not with dignity, but stiffly, like every movement required conscious effort. Like she was fighting gravity. She stepped into the aisle, her expensive bag hugged against her with both arms, sunglasses trembling slightly in her grip. She avoided eye contact with everyone. That was new. The woman who performed importance in every gesture now couldn't bear to meet another pair of eyes. The walk from business class to economy felt impossibly long. I watched her move past each row, shoulders tight, posture shrinking with every step. People watched her. Some with curiosity, some with satisfaction, some with quiet judgment. Humiliation is not always loud. Sometimes it is the silence that makes it unbearable. When she reached the economy section, she paused, scanning the rows. The seat they'd assigned her was near the back. Middle seat. Between two strangers. No extra space. No privacy. No status. She hesitated, visibly horrified. But there was no alternative now. She lowered herself into the seat. Her bag rested on her lap, dominating her discomfort. And the moment she settled, the person in the window seat turned slightly, accidentally brushing it with their elbow. Emily flinched, like she'd been struck. The woman beside her offered an apologetic smile. Sorry, tight space. Emily didn't respond. Her expression was frozen. Lips tight, eyes distant, chest rising in shallow breaths. The bag took up too much room. She had no place to put it. Not under the seat. Not overhead. Not now. She was physically cramped by the very object she had allowed to define her. The irony was almost too precise. I returned to my rightful seat. The cabin felt different now. Lighter. The air seemed easier to breathe. For the first time since boarding, I had space to settle. As I sat down, the man across the aisle leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "Good for you." His voice carried no mockery, just relief that someone had stood up to arrogance. I gave a small nod. Nothing more. I wasn't here to bask in victory. I only wanted respect, fairness, the simple acknowledgement that people are equal, no matter what they carry or what they claim to be. The plane continued its final boarding preparations. The engines hummed softly. The lights dimmed slightly in the cabin. The door sealed with a solid, echoing click. We began to taxi. A few minutes later, we lifted off the ground. The world below fell away in a wash of clouds and distance. Some time passed. I couldn't say how long. Enough for the cabin to settle into quiet rhythms, soft conversation, pages turning, the muted clink of water glasses. Then I heard it. A sharp gasp. Not loud, but unmistakable. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see past the divider between business and economy. A flight attendant was walking down the aisle with a tray of drinks. A sudden shift of turbulence caused the tray to tilt. One glass tipped. Not completely, just enough. A splash of liquid landed on Emily's lap. Her bag was sitting there. The sound that came out of her was not quite a scream, but it carried the same sharp, jarring panic. "Oh my God, no, 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 watch what you're doing." Her voice cracked mid-sentence. The attendant apologized immediately, grabbing napkins. But Emily was already frantic, clutching the bag, inspecting it, reacting as though her life had been altered permanently. The turbulence wasn't severe. The liquid wasn't heavy. But it didn't matter. To her, this was devastation. Passengers around her tried not to watch, but the situation was too dramatic to ignore. She wasn't in danger. She wasn't hurt. But the thing she valued more than courtesy, more than fairness, more than basic decency, it had been touched by the world she believed was beneath her. Her voice trembled. Not with anger now, but with something that sounded dangerously close to humiliation. I didn't feel satisfaction exactly. Not joy. Not triumph. Just closure. Eventually, she stopped reacting. She sat still, shoulders hunched, bag clutched in a protective grip, head lowered. The woman who walked onto the plane, believing she existed above everyone else, now sat smaller than everyone around her. Meanwhile, the flight attendant returned to my row. She leaned in slightly, speaking quietly. "Thank you for being patient. We appreciate how calmly you handled everything." I nodded. "Thank you for addressing it." She smiled, a genuine one this time. "Most people escalate. You didn't. That made our job easier." I offered a soft breath of amusement. "I guess some bags fly better than their owners." She covered her mouth to stifle a laugh before stepping away. The rest of the flight passed without incident. Calm. Quiet. Ordinary. I rested. I prepared for my meeting. I felt my breath settle, my shoulders loosen, the tension dissolve like fog in sunlight. When we landed, passengers began to stand, collect their belongings, stretch their legs. Emily stayed seated, waiting, as though hoping the crowd would disperse before she had to move. She didn't look toward the front of the plane. She didn't look toward me. Her posture was small, folded inward. I didn't need to say anything to her. Her actions had spoken long enough. Her consequences had answered. As I stepped off the plane, I felt no lingering anger. No unfinished business. Only a steady, grounded calm. Entitlement had been met with consequence. Arrogance had been answered with reality. And respect had been restored, not through confrontation, but through patience, clarity, and timing. Some lessons in life are delivered quietly. Some are delivered in the aisle of an airplane at 30,000 feet. And some are delivered by a bag that was never meant to sit in a seat meant for a person. I walked forward into the airport terminal, head clear, step steady. The story didn't need a moral. It was already one,